if you're encouraging people to work for longer, file for Social Security earlier so they're having less of a monthly payout, and then continuing for them to work or encouraging them to work maybe more, you're encouraging them to make more money, which means more income that's taxable, which means more money coming into the coffers, right?
Right.
So at the end of the day, any tweak that they make to the Social Security program basically
it's designed to prop up the Social Security program.
It's designed to screw you.
Right,
I mean, let's
exactly.
be honest.
29% of people claim Social Security at age 62, so just a little under a third. Well, that third of people are the ones who are affected by that earnings test. So if those people are now encouraged to continue working, even if only for a few years, well, what happens? They're taking their Social Security at a lower dollar amount, which means in theory, the Social Security bankroll doesn't have to pay out as much. And they're also continuing to work, which means, you just said it, they're putting more dollars into Social Security. They're also putting more dollars into income tax as well, which can then be redirected, if Congress so wishes. It can be redirected into places like the Social Security Fund, things like that. So this is another example of little bitty tweaks that go under the radar. The average person doesn't pay any attention to it at all.
Welcome back to another edition of the Retirement Planning Happy Hour. This is Eric Douglas. I'm with Chris Vaughn, half of the co-founders of Family Wealth Planning Partners, headquartered here in Louisville, Kentucky. Coming to you once again from Derby during Derby week. We are recording back-to-back episodes this week because, with
it's like a holiday around
it was a holiday, yeah, and we've got some stuff going on the next couple of weeks. A lot of spring activities going on, and so just conflicting schedules over the next few weeks for the both of us.
Yeah,
and so we decided to go ahead and knock out a few episodes here while we have a little bit of time. While most of the rest of the city is probably at the track for Derby today and getting ready to go to the track for over the next 2 days. So we're here drinking some delicious bourbon, and we're going to talk about Social Security. When we talk about the pantheon of exciting topics in our industry, Social Security is maybe not at the top of the list, but it's definitely closer to the top than the bottom of, the most boring subjects that we talk about. But we have to talk about Social Security. It is the cornerstone. It is the bedrock. It is whatever term that you want to use. It is the foundation for pretty much every single retirement income plan that we build for our clients. Yeah. Every client is affected by it, and so we have to talk about it. And we get questions a lot around Social Security. Number one question that we get is, do we think it is going to run out of money?
I hear that one so frequently that it at this point in time, I know the question is coming. I just go ahead and get it out there.
We've had this conversation so many times. Happy to have the conversation, but we've gotten pretty good at the conversation, I would imagine. But there's a lot of people that say, well, I'm not worried about Social Security because I'm not going to get it. It's not going to be around.
I've heard that one a million times too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so we're going to talk through those questions, and we're going to give some stats and some figures and some things that kind of give context to some of the things that we're going to talk about as it relates to the way that we answer some of those concerns around Social Security specifically. But since we are talking about Social Security, and since older people take Social Security, we're going to drink an older bourbon.
What a great tie-in. That was awesome.
Look at that transition. Look at that transition. They don't pay me the big bucks for nothing, right?
So what we are drinking today is Elijah Craig 18-year-old. Not that long ago, this was a bona fide unicorn. This was just one of those bottles you never saw. You still don't see it very often.
No.
Because it's desirable. Now, I'm going to go ahead and throw something out there. Older doesn't necessarily mean better. I have had, there is a brand that I like that released a 21-year-old bourbon here recently, slapped a $200 or $250 price tag on it retail, and everybody was losing their mind, and I got an opportunity to try it, and it was like, I feel like somebody just beat me to death with an oak tree, and it was not good. It's like Paul Bunyan came out and pulled an oak baseball bat out, just beat me down. It was not good. So that's the problem with 18. They say the sweet spot is 12 years. Sometime around that 12-year mark is when a bourbon gets its maximum amount of complexity and flavors. And then after that, the flavors start going away and it becomes more oaky.
And then you're losing more to evaporation,
And
so
you're
you're only
losing
driving
more-
up the price. And
Exactly
all that
right.
stuff,
So that's where you get into like the Pappies, for example. You get into the 20 and the 23-year-old Pappy that are so expensive and in demand. But if you've ever had them, they are all oak. So the Elijah Craig 18-year-old is always a single barrel. This one is from 2023. March of 2023. They list the barrel number on there. I've had this many times. I've had it when it was not great. I've had it when it was outstanding. That's the risk anytime you get to a single barrel. You know, some of them are really good and some of them are not so much.
Was this a barrel pick?
No, it's not a barrel pick, but
okay.
it is a single barrel. So, and they do put the barrel that it came from on the bottle, kind of neat. And they put this little tag on here with the story. But as you can tell, I've had this one. I got it not too long after it was bottled. I've had it for about 3 years. It's only about half gone. Because you just don't want to drink this too often because you don't know when you're going to be able to get another bottle of it. And this is one that I've thoroughly enjoyed. I don't believe you've ever had this one, correct?
I feel like I have.
Okay.
But I may be wrong.
Don't necessarily
I don't
remember
recall.
it. So, well, hopefully you are in for
my
a very
sister,
pleasant surprise
my sister
today.
used to work at Heaven Hill, so
Okay.
I've had a lot of variations of the different Heaven Hill
Right.
products over the years. But anywho,
So anyway, that's what we're drinking, an old bourbon to talk about an old person subject, I guess. I like that. All right.
no offense meant by that, of course. But anyway, so let's start with just some stats
Okay.
around Social Security. And, you know, from there, we'll get into a lot of our talking points because you and I had these memorized. We talk about Social Security so much. We've taught Social Security classes. At one point, I was certified Social Security instructor,
Yep.
right? So we
And I am still amazed that of all the dinner seminars and educational seminars that you hear about advisors doing, Social Security is still by far the number one topic out there. It's a big drop off to second.
Yeah, and even though it's interesting because a lot of the filing strategies that used to be kind of in vogue and complicated to understand, and this is kind of going to tie into kind of the subject for today, but a lot of those have been eliminated and removed.
Yeah.
So Social Security, for the most part, is actually pretty
straightforward,
straightforward at this point. There's not really much hidden behind the curtain that we don't know about, that you're not able to access. So anyway, with that being said, about 67 million Americans per month receive a Social Security benefit. Don't know how many dead people that includes, according to the what was it, the Doe's team that where they found out they were. I forgot how many dead people were still receiving Social Security benefits, so I don't know if that's included in the 67 million.
It was a number that, depending on your perspective, was very surprising, or it really wasn't that surprising, right?
It was not surprising for me, but that's But the Social Security Administration pays out, about $1.4 trillion in benefits each year.
That's a stunning number. I mean, I get it, but still, $1.4 trillion gets paid out every single year.
Yes,
that's hard to wrap your head around.
You can't visualize. We've talked about the way that you can visualize $1 billion. Yeah. You can't visualize a trillion.
No, my brain is not capable of understanding just how big that number is.
No. For a society that still produces pennies, right?
Actually, no, they've stopped producing pennies.
Did they stop?
Now. Yeah, that was 2025. They stopped.
Well, I know they talked about it.
Yeah,
did I miss that? Okay,
yeah.
I totally missed that.
So the question is, do the pennies become more valuable in 100 years for a few of them that are still around, right?
Well, tell me what the price of copper is, I guess. The average Social Security benefit for retired workers is about $1,840 per month. Now, this is the average. Mm-hmm. It's worth noting this is going to include people that filed for Social Security 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? So the average new retiree is going to receive probably a benefit much greater than that. Yeah. But as of today, the average Social Security benefit for a retired worker is $1,840 per month. Payouts have increased 96.2% since the year 2000.
That sounds cool. Why is that not impressive?
That sounds like a lot on the surface. That sounds like payouts for Social Security have gone up a tremendous amount. However, inflation has increased 165% since the year 2000.
So clearly, Social Security is not keeping up with
Social
inflation.
Security
Not even close.
is 100% not keeping up with inflation. And so it's always, once again, a talking point that we have a lot when we have clients in the office and we're putting together retirement income plans. We have to factor in inflation specifically for this reason. Yep. Because Social Security does not do a good job of keeping up with inflation, as you can see by the numbers right here in front of us. But it's also worth noting this is not in what we're reading, but we also know that once you go to file for Social Security, what else are you going to file for? Medicare, right? At 65. Mm-hmm. Medicare gets the same cost of living adjustments that Social Security does. So the Medicare premiums that you have to pay go up in perpetuity every year. Obviously, they get cost of living adjustments, but they go up parallel to the average cost of living adjustment for Social Security.
So translation for those of you who don't like to do percentages, basically the cost of living increase that Social Security recipients receive each year, you don't really get to appreciate the full value of that because one of your mandatory expenditures goes up right alongside with it. Mm-hmm. So
you get a little bit of money coming in, but that money that comes in is going right back out. In one ear and right out the other, just like I'm talking to my son, right?
That's a different podcast.
Yeah, well, we can do a whole.
We could.
We can do a whole new podcast channel on that topic, right? About how much my teenagers listen to me. But anyway, payouts have gone up, but it has not kept up with inflation. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, we get this question a lot too. How much should Social Security equate to what my earnings were?
Right. Generally
speaking, on average, your Social Security benefits only replace about 33 to 55% of whatever your income was. Obviously, income is going to be variable throughout your working history, right? So that's why there's such a large variance in that number. But generally speaking, less than half. Mm-hmm. Less than half of your income. I usually use 40%, so that's kind of within this range. But less than half of whatever you were making, you should be relying on Social Security to replace. Meaning we have a pretty big gap to fill when we're generating retirement income plans and figuring out where we're going to draw the other, 50 to 60% of your total income needs, right? So the average. It's also worth noting Social Security is the largest source of income for most beneficiaries. Yeah. By far and away, most beneficiaries, this is going to be the largest source of income. This is going to be where we're going to have a lot of talking points.
Okay.
Right? Experts estimate that the Social Security program can be funded in full through the year 2033. For all years following, retirees will only receive 76% of their scheduled benefits. Now, these numbers are always fluctuate. The last number I heard was actually Social Security is fully funded through about 2030. Mm-hmm. So now we're hearing estimates around 2033, which is a good thing.
Yep.
Right? So they're increasing the amount of time before they think Social Security program will go broke. But I also heard the last number I heard was it'll be enough to pay the incoming receipts will be enough to pay about 77% of benefits. Now they're estimating it to be about 76% of benefits. So that number is going down.
Yep.
With that being said, what do they mean by that?
Well, okay, so when you talk about
when they talk about the program that can be funded in full,
what you have to understand is the way that Social Security works in order to answer that question.
Yes.
And that is that people are going to get mad at me when I say this, but we discussed this before we started recording. Neither one of us are running for office, so we don't care if you get mad at us about this one.
We can be honest, yeah.
Social Security is a Ponzi scheme.
100%.
Period. Right? So now that has a very negative connotation to it for a good reason.
Once again, Social Security is a Ponzi scheme.
Yes. So the way that a Ponzi scheme works is you are paying into something that somebody else is receiving from. By the time you receive a benefit from it, somebody else, in this case younger than you, is paying into it. So the whole Bernie Madoff thing, that's where the average person heard about a Ponzi scheme for the very first time. People were paying into this investment, but your money was not being invested for you. Somebody else was already receiving it. In order for that to keep going in perpetuity, he had to keep finding new people willing to drop their money. Well, Social Security works the same way, except The government doesn't need to find new people. The government gets to make the rules, right? So anytime we hear somebody say, I want to claim my Social Security while I can, because I want to get the money out of it that I paid into it. That's the key one, is that last part. The money that you paid into it is already gone.
It's already gone.
Somebody else already received that. You love to tell the story of Ida Mae Fuller, right? Which was, she received check number 1. I don't remember all the details, but when Social Security was created back in the 30s, the life expectancy for Americans was what? 68, 69 years old.
It was less than 70, yeah.
You didn't even get to file, or you got to file earlier, but your full retirement age at the time, I believe, was 65 was the rule back then.
Yep.
So the theory was you were going to live for 3, 4, 5 years after you filed before you'd pass away, on average. Ida Mae Fuller lived to be, if memory serves, 100 years old exactly.
Well, she filed at 65. She was the very first recipient. She's the first person to ever receive a Social Security check.
Right.
She paid in,
It's like
I believe,
$3,000 or something.
No. She paid in about $240.
Okay, all right, it's even worse.
She received just under $3,000 in benefits. It was like $2,600. Forgive me, I don't remember the exact number, but it was less than $3,000 in total benefits that she received from the program. So from literally the very first recipient, Social Security was underwater. And yet here we are, decades later, almost a century later, still talking about it. It's still alive.
Underwater because
it won't die.
Well, okay, why is it underwater? Because quite frankly, people are living longer than what it was designed to support, right? It was supposed to be a safety net, not your sole income when you're retired. And I think too many people kind of think of it that way. And then I've never heard of anybody honestly saying, okay, well, I'm going to live till this age and then I'm just going to stop. Right? It doesn't work that way. People are living much, much longer than what they were. When the program came out, as we were just talking about, the average life expectancy was under 70. And that wasn't just because people got to old age under 70. It was people just died earlier than that because life was more dangerous. You know, foods were not as safe. We didn't have the knowledge that we did now. Medicine was probably the single biggest one.
This was classified as medicine.
Slightly before that. We have another one coming up for our next podcast. That's going to be a prohibition era one that I think people will like. But the big one is people are simply living longer. It is now statistically probable, if you are married people live longer, and you are already 65 years old, one of you, if not both of you, is going to live into your 90s. That was an unheard of thing.
If both spouses reach the age of 65, there's a 92% chance that one of them will reach the age of 90.
Yeah.
Now, the longer, and I say this too, the longer you live, the longer
you're likely to
live.
You're
going to live, because if you get to that point, if you get to 65, you've already outlived the average.
You've beaten the statistics at that point.
Yeah.
And okay, think about that. That's married people who are 65. Now think about people who are my age. I'm about to be 55. You're about to be 45. Think about the people who are about to be 35. And they're married. How long are they likely to live? 100 is going to become a fairly common thing. Once upon a time, that was exceedingly rare. It's going to become very common, and that's the big concern. As we're living longer, Social Security is simply having to pay out for much, much longer periods of time than what it was designed to. Therein lies the problem.
One of the funniest things that I see is when you look at the pictures of 40-year-olds in the 80s and pictures of 40-year-olds today.
Oh my gosh,
it is night and day. The 40-year-olds from the 80s look like they're 60.
I don't know if you remember it. You're kind of at that age where you may or may not have gotten. Do you remember the movie Cocoon?
Oh yeah,
right. Yeah. The old people in that movie. Half those old people were in their 50s when they filmed that movie. And I'm sitting there going, you know what? Physically, I'm not what I once was, but I don't look like that, right? Nor do any of the people that are my age. We just don't. We're aging more slowly now, right?
Who was the guy with the white hair and the mustache? It was the
Wilford Brimley.
The Wilford Brimley line. And so it was the
diabetes guy.
It was the Wilford Brimley line, and he was like 50 in that movie.
Yeah.
And so they say, once you kind of hit that age, and they always compare like Hollywood superstars when they hit 50, and they would compare him to what he looked like in that movie. And was it that movie?
Or
That's right. It was that movie. And so they would compare what he looked like in that movie to whatever superstars look like
Right.
today. And the average 50-year-old
Night
looks
and day
absolutely
difference.
nothing like he
No.
did. Yeah. And so they call it the Wilford. There's a Twitter, there's a
Yeah.
Twitter account for it, like the Wilford Brimley line. And then whenever there was some Hollywood person that hit 50 years old, they said they had a picture of them at 50
Right.
versus a picture of him at 50. and another one I remember very specifically, George Wendt, Norm from Cheers.
Oh gosh, yes, yeah.
He was like 36 when that show started.
But he looked like he was in his 50s.
Oh,
at the time,
yeah,
right?
absolutely, yeah. And so 40-year-olds today do not look like 40-year-olds 20, 30
Nope.
years ago, and they did not look like 40-year-olds before then, right? People are living longer because we're healthier, we're taking better care of ourselves.
Correct. And therein lies the biggest
yeah.
part of the problem. We're just simply living longer than what this program was designed to support. You could say the same thing about most pensions. Similar concept. Social Security is a form of enforced pension. None of these programs were designed for people to live as long as what they are now.
Yeah, and I always, it's a different generation. It's a generational thing, but whenever you hear folks complain about pensions going the way of the dodo bird, they had to.
Yeah.
The companies were going broke. They could not support a pension. Recently, a couple of years ago, UPS got rid of their pension, and they moved everyone to a private pay situation, defined contribution plan. But they had to get rid of their pension because it was unsustainable. They were going to run out of money. They don't have a printing press like the government does.
Right.
Although in theory it's the same thing.
The vast majority of pensions are still from governments, be it federal, state, local.
Very, very, and I'm struggling off the top of my head to think about a private company that has not given up their pension. All the big names that I knew that were doing it, as far as I know, they've pretty much given them up.
I can't think of any on the top of my head that still have them. I know they exist, but most of the private pensions that you see now are actually unions. They're not the employer. It's the union that you're part of that's actually paying for that.
So people are living longer. It's a Ponzi scheme, right? And it was never designed to support someone for 20, 30 years.
30, 40 years, right?
Exactly. So, but anyway, going back to what we were talking about. So experts estimate this the Social Security program can be funded in full through 2033. What does that mean? Most people don't truly understand how the program works either. So when you pay Social Security taxes, you are paying into what's called the OSADI program. It's the Old Age Survivor and Disability Income Plan or income program. They have a reserves. Think of it like an emergency fund. Like you have an emergency fund at the bank. You pay into the OASDI reserves is where your Social Security taxes go to. When they say that Social Security is going to run out of money, what they are referring to is 2033 is the estimated year where the OASDI reserves are depleted in full. And so at that point, when it says that they will only have enough revenue to support 76% of all benefits, what they mean by that is all of the people that are paying into the Social Security program, all the revenue that's being generated in Social Security taxes. I say revenue being generated, it's our taxes that are paying for it, right?
Yeah.
So we pay Social Security taxes. The money that's coming in via Social Security taxes is only going to cover roughly 76% of that 1.4 trillion in benefits that has to go out every year.
Right.
Of course, whatever number that is, I would imagine will be higher in 2033, right? That's what they mean. So it's not like the program is going to go away.
Right. It's just not going to have a reserve anymore.
Exactly. And let's be real, the program is never going to go away. It will never go away.
We'll talk about why a little bit later. But yeah, it's correct. It's never going to go away.
So with that being said, that's always the first thing that I talk about when clients think that we're going to lose Social Security. Right? No, you're not. It's not going away. You're still going to have it. And what's it going to do now? I mean, why is it not going to go away?
Well,
go ahead.
It's not going to go away because let's think about this. What would cause it to go away, right? What would cause it to be underfunded in the future? It's because the people that have the ability to make the changes are elected officials. They're our congressmen, our senators. The reason that we don't believe that it will ever go away, well, let's think about it. Think about we're at a midterm election year this year. What is the primary purpose of every congressman and senator? And I've heard people who are very idealistic say, to represent the people of their district.
Yeah, they're
And I want to be a smart aleck and say, wow, you're cute. The reality is their purpose above everything else is to get reelected.
Correct.
Right. And if you don't realize that is their number one thing out there.
You might not think that that's their purpose.
Yeah, they do.
But trust me, their donors and themselves, they view their job as to get reelected.
Correct. So if you think about your job is to get reelected every 2 to 6 years, depending on, which kind of office you hold, what demographic votes much more consistently than any other demographic? And by the way, they are also the ones who communicate with their elected officials by far more than anybody else. It's older people. Yeah. That's not a new phenomenon, right? Older people vote at a much higher rate than younger people do. It's been that way probably since the beginning of our country. And you know what? I've never heard of a 35 or a 45-year-old calling their congressman's office to complain. But that's not unusual at all for a 65, 75, 85-year-old person to do. They're already retired. They have time, right? So if you think about, all right, so the very people who have a say-so in this are also, their primary job is to get reelected, which means don't piss off your voting base, right? Well, if they did away with Social Security, if they allowed it to go to 76%, what's going to happen? All of those retirees, the people who are already receiving benefits, they're not just going to make phone calls. They're not just going to say, well, I'm not going to vote for you next time. They would march on Washington. It would be bad, right? There would be torches and pitchforks in the streets of D.C., which is the worst case scenario for an elected official. That's why they're never going to let this die. Now, the question is, how are they going to keep it from going away? That's where this debate really comes in.
Yeah, because there's two parts of this, right? No one is ever going to get elected on a promise to reform Social Security and get rid of it. Or get rid of it. No, I mean, the closest that we got, at least in my lifetime, W. Bush, tried to privatize Social Security.
He talked about privatizing it, right?
And if he had privatized it, I mean,
it would be fixed.
I have a lot of issues with him and his presidency for probably different reasons than a lot of people do. But regardless, if that had gone through, that would have been one of the best things that could have ever happened to our economy.
And keep in mind, if that had gone through when he was talking about it, we would have gone through 2008, only a couple years afterwards. And we all know that sequence of returns risk says big downside early is bad. And we would have also had, we would have 2018 and we would have had 2022. Those would have been really, really bad things. And the entire program would be totally fixed if we had done what was suggested at the time. But nobody wanted to do that. They don't want to fix it because if they suggest fixing it, they're scared to death that they're going to lose votes and they won't get reelected.
Yeah, it's a government program. They don't die. There's no graveyards for government programs, right? So no one gets elected on getting rid of Social Security,
right?
But we do need to reform it, and politicians there's this double-edged sword where they can't get rid of it, but they have to reform it whether they want to or not. And so what they're doing now, and you're already seeing this, you're seeing incremental changes,
big time.
We haven't got to the point where we're seeing major changes yet, at least not yet. I think some of those
coming.
Those will be coming as we get closer to this 2033 number. Now that we're in 2026, I mean, it's really not that far away. There will be bigger changes, but you're seeing incremental changes already. One of them was just announced, and we'll talk about that here in a second, getting rid of the earnings test. But one of the big things that has already happened over the course of the last several years has been what they tax, how much income they tax Social Security taxes on.
Right. This one's it's a little bit confusing for a lot of people. Social Security is you only pay that tax on your income up to a certain limit. So if you make over that limit, then you don't pay Social Security tax, which personally is 6.2%, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
For years and years and years, it was like 133 or 135,000. But that has changed, and it's changed pretty rapidly.
So it went from about 130,000 to 165.
Like in 1 year.
Like 3 years ago, yeah. And then it went from 165 to 175, and then this year for 2026, it's now 185,000 and change.
Right.
that you have to pay taxes on, pay Social Security taxes on, basically 6.2% of your income as an employee. The employer pays an additional 6.2% Social Security taxes up to that point.
12.4 is actually being paid on that difference between what used to be 130 or whatever it was, and now would you say 184? That's a pretty substantial amount of money that the fund is bringing in. So we were talking off air.
184.5.
184.5. Okay. It wasn't but a few years ago they were talking about the trust fund would be depleted in 2029. Now they're talking about 2033. Well, it's not a big difference, but that's the kind of stuff that kind of pushes that number out. They make a little bit more money into the fund by, in a way, they're raising the taxes. You don't realize that. But people who are making over that 130 number are now paying a tax that they weren't before.
It's 100% a tax increase. So, for example, if you make $200,000 a year, and with inflation and rising wages, more and more people are making 150 plus over really since COVID when inflation really kind of went haywire. You only paid so if you made $150,000, you only paid Social Security taxes up to $130,000. So once you kind of made $130,000, let's say you got there at like October, the paychecks that you got in November and December were higher. Were higher
because you weren't paying as much.
Because you weren't paying as much in taxes. You weren't paying Social Security taxes anymore. I think a lot of people don't truly understand the way that Social Security generates its revenue, and that's how it does it. Well, so that number was just a few years ago about 133,000. I don't remember the exact number. It jumped to 160, and then it jumped to 175, and now it's at 184.5. So now every dollar that you make up to $184,500, you will pay 6.2% Social Security tax.
And your company.
And
your
company
6.2 on it.
And your company on top of that will pay that amount of money as well.
That's a huge number that's being created by that. It really is.
Yes. And that number will continue to go up. Notice that never makes the press. That never makes the news, right? People don't talk about that, but it's usually included in the bottom of some 3,000-page bill.
Right.
And, it's just not very sexy, but it's incremental, right? And those incremental changes to the Social Security program will always be put in to ensure that it does not run out of money. Because trust me, the death knell for every single politician in Washington, if it happens on their watch, is they're all losing their jobs. Social Security goes broke.
There's a reason why we hear the phrase, it's the third rail of American politics.
Can't touch it.
And for those of you who do not live in larger cities, that third rail refers to trains and subways. That third rail is electrified, and if you touch it, you die. Right? You'd be electrocuted. That's what they're talking about. If you mess with Social Security, if you talk about Social Security reform, your political career is over. That's the concern. That's why they can't fix it.
I've heard politicians give interviews about, running for office and some of the pitfalls that they have and some of the difficulties of running for office.
Sure.
And, especially if you're on a certain side of the aisle, you get asked a question about, Social Security reform. And if you try to answer it with any level of honesty whatsoever, you're pilloried.
Yep.
Like
you're done.
The campaign ads that are run against you. So you have this double-edged sword where you cannot talk about it, but you're going to get asked about it by your opponents. And you have to answer, right? In theory, you have to answer, but any answer you give is going to be turned around saying that you want to get rid of Social Security. You want to privatize Social Security. In any statement that you make, basically say, I remember one politician or one guy that ran for office, he was giving an interview talking about, not once did I ever say out loud that I wanted to get rid of Social Security. Never said it. Never said it on record, never said it off record. Not once did I ever said we need to get rid of Social Security. I talked about some of the changes that I would like to make in theory, but I never talked about privatizing it. But then he went on to say that every single attack ad that was ran against him was about getting rid of Social Security.
Right.
And he was having die-hard people that agreed with him 95% of the time, but he had 70-year-old ladies coming up to him, why are you trying to take my Social Security? They agreed with him on absolutely everything, but they were still scared that he was trying to take away their Social Security. And he had to explain to these people that were watching these television ads that not once did he ever say that. He does not. He wasn't trying to get rid of it. And so no politician anywhere is going to run on getting rid of it.
Right.
No one will ever try to privatize it ever again. It is here. It is a fact of life. I love when people talk about, well, we should do this and we should do that. Whatever. You're wasting your breath. It's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. It's so embedded in our culture now
Right.
at this point that it is what it is. So what they will do, though, is they have to make these incremental changes. They're already making incremental changes around the amount of income that is taxed to pay to pay into the Social Security program. Okay, so they will continue to increase that every year. So right now it's at 184.5. It'll go up to 200.
Right.
It'll go up to 200. It'll go up to 250. It'll keep going up over time.
So it's effectively a tax increase that nobody will ever talk about. The media will never catch on to that, and that's how you kind of prop it up. But that's only one fix.
And anybody that's making that amount of money is not going to go cry about it because, I mean, look at the people that are making too much money crying about the taxes that they have to pay. So that makes them look bad. So it's just one of those things that no one's ever going to talk about, right? They're talking about getting rid of the earnings test now.
Yeah, so this was actually on the news this morning.
This is in the news this week, yep.
I did a little reading on it. This was actually introduced a couple of months ago. There were, I don't remember who they were. It's Rick Scott from Florida as the senator, and there was a congressman that did it, also a Republican, that introduced this bill into each of the two houses of Congress. It's the earnings test. If you don't know what that is, that's what most people call the penalty. So you're allowed to file for Social Security under normal circumstances as early as age 62. Now you receive a reduced benefit from what your full eligibility is. However, if you continue to work after age 62 and you've already filed for Social Security up until you hit full retirement age, so for most people who have not filed yet, that's 67. During that window, you are subjected to the earnings test. So if I remember correctly, the income is $24,800. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
It's right around that number.
It's somewhere in that area. So for every $2 you make in salary or wages above that 24,000 number.
24,480.
24,480. I was close. So for every $2 that you make above that, your Social Security income that you're already receiving is reduced by $1.
Yep.
Well, it doesn't take a whole lot of income to reduce your Social Security down to effectively zero, even though you've already filed. So that's the reason most people call it the penalty. Technically, it's not a penalty because you're still earning and therefore you're still increasing your eligibility in theory.
And you're also still paying Social Security taxes.
And you're still paying Social Security taxes to the tune of 12.4% between you and your employer. All the way up until you hit your full retirement age, somewhere between 66 and 67. After that point, you can make as much money as you want to, and your Social Security is not impacted by it if you're already filed. So it affects that group of people. The argument that they were making on the news is that this would encourage more seniors to continue working.
To work more.
To work more. Okay.
Well, let's talk about why. So if you file for Social Security between 62 and 67, you can only work so much. You can only make up to that amount of money.
Right.
So you're basically, we're talking about people that have retired at, let's say, 63, and they're going to be, they're a Walmart greeter. Right. And they kind of stop working once they make that up to that earnings test. Once they make about that $24,000, they stop working because they know if they continue to work more than that, they're going to start losing Social Security benefits. So they basically put a cap on how much money they can make and how much they can work, how much productivity that they can contribute to society, so to speak, right?
So keep rolling with that. All right, so we already know there was a stat in here that it was, let me see if I can find it here, 29% of people claim Social Security at age 62, so just a little under a third. Well, that third of people are the ones who are affected by that earnings test. So if those people are now encouraged to continue working, even if only for a few years, well, what happens? They're taking their Social Security at a lower dollar amount, which means in theory, the Social Security, bankroll doesn't have to pay out as much. And they're also continuing to work, which means, you just said it, they're putting more dollars into Social Security. They're also putting more dollars into income tax as well, which can then be redirected, if Congress so wishes. It can be redirected into places like the Social Security Fund, things like that. So this is another example of little bitty tweaks that go under the radar. The average person doesn't pay any attention to it at all. So you don't protest. You don't go, oh, I don't like that. And all of a sudden, it's law because it's buried in a 3,000-page bill, like you said.
Yeah.
And it helps prop up the system. But these are not the kind of things that are going to fix the problem. Not in my opinion.
It's kicking the can down the road.
Correct.
Yeah. But I will add another thing, too, that I think what they're hoping also happens is that if we get rid of the earnings test, people at 62 will go ahead and file for benefits even though that they do continue to plan to work. What the government wants you to do, quite frankly, is they want you to file early.
Right.
Because they're paying you much less of a paycheck, and they know people are living longer, and they know if you wait until 67 or 70 to file for your benefits, you're going to get a much larger paycheck for the rest of your life. Right. And the magic number is kind of about 80.
I'd say 83, I
think. It's between 82 and 83, depending upon the specific numbers of your situation. But that's usually the magic number where if you live to about 83 years old, you've kind of beat the government. You've won.
Right.
You've won, and you're going to collect more money from the Social Security program by waiting to file until 70 than if you had filed at 62 or 65. Right. Well, what was the stat that we talked about earlier? If you're a married couple filing, that lives to 65, one of you is going to live to the age of 90. So we're talking about people that are fairly savvy that are waiting for a longer amount of time. I don't want to say fairly savvy, but people that are savvier maybe and maybe healthier that are typically waiting longer. What they're trying to do is they're trying to encourage more people to file early.
Correct.
Right? Because the people that are maybe deterred from filing until later, they're trying to get them to file earlier, so they're actually having to pay out over time a smaller amount of Social Security benefits.
Correct.
Because they know that the adjustments that are made to your payment by waiting to file until 67 or 70, it's going to go up basically 8% per year.
Right.
So they know if they can get you to take a permanent cut by filing, somewhere between 62 and 67, that's less money that the government has to pay over time.
Correct.
Perpetuity throughout your lifetime.
It also creates a lower tax base for them to work with.
Yeah.
Okay? Or a greater tax base for them to work with. And here's what I mean by that.
Yep.
One of the more common strategies that we as financial planners use is we will, on a retiree, we will have them spend down their personal savings, their IRAs, their 401ks, a little bit earlier.
This is an excellent point, by the way.
Okay?
So,
Thank
yes.
you. They're spending that money down earlier, which is counterintuitive to most people. And the reason for that is because we take Social Security later, we spend IRA, 401k money earlier. That does two things. It increases the amount of money that they receive in Social Security benefits, but it reduces the RMD amounts. And in some cases, it creates enough of a Social Security income that these people are not taking that much out of IRAs and 401ks at that point in time. So we use that strategy as a tax play to reduce the overall taxation on our clients. Okay, by the government doing this, eliminating the earnings test, it encourages people to do the exact opposite. Taking Social Security early when they're not going to be, quote unquote, penalized. They continue to work. Now, when they get into the RMD ages, they're going to be paying much larger amounts because investment advisors are continuing to make that money grow, making a bigger tax base. And they're also now, remember, Social Security is taxable. It's the only true double taxation. You paid a tax to have it, and now you're going to pay a tax when you take it out. But the amount that you pay when you take it out is based upon your income.
Your provisional income.
Correct.
To be clear.
Your provisional income, right. There's a calculation for that. But because RMDs are now going to be larger, there's a greater chance you're going to max out that provisional income number and be taxing Social Security at the highest possible rate. So once again, it's those little tweaks that when you look at the way this will actually play out, it increases the amount of money that is coming into the Social Security Trust Fund exponentially.
Yeah. So if you correct. So if you are increasing basically the amount of money that if you're encouraging people to work for longer, file for Social Security earlier, so they're having less of a monthly payout, and then continuing for them to work or encouraging them to work maybe more, you're encouraging them to make more money, which means more income that's taxable, which means more money coming into the coffers, right?
Right.
So at the end of the day, any tweak that they make to the Social Security program
it's designed to prop up the Social Security program.
It's designed to screw you.
Right,
I mean, let's be honest. But it's these small tweaks that have, I mean, several different layers of effects to your overall, to your overall payment.
Right.
And so on the surface, it might not seem like a bad idea. It might not seem like a big deal to you as an individual, but you take you and magnify it by the
millions of people that are
by the
claiming.
tens of millions of people that are claiming
67 million. There you go.
Exactly. So you take those small amounts and you magnify them by 67 million times. That's a big deal.
Right.
And so now you're propping up the Social Security program or the reserves for another 2 years, right? By making some small incremental changes. So there's a lot of different incremental changes that they can make along the way, like that they will continue to make. That you don't know any. Most people have
You won't
no
even
idea.
realize it.
Most
That's right.
people don't even know what the earnings test is.
Right.
Most people don't understand or know what the maximum amount of income that is taxed for Social Security. Most people don't know that.
Right.
So those are the things that they're playing with kind of around the edges to keep the program solvent, and they will continue to make those changes.
That's not going to change. So I want to kind of wrap that part up. We've talked about the ways that the government can incrementally and behind the scenes, if you will, change it. So let's change gears and talk about the major changes that are possible. These are the ones that when they start talking about doing this, people really get up in arms, even though it really could save the entire program if they would do this. Now, the last time that there was a major change to age requirements, so on and so forth, was 1984. Wrap your head around that. Ronald Reagan was in his first term, right? I was in middle school when this happened, right? People who are, born in 1960 or later are kind of the big impact, and we'll talk about some of the things that they did back then. Those people were 24 years old. They are retired now or are about to be retired.
Yep.
It's been a long time since they've made a major change. So here's some of the things that are likely to change, and they've been talked about. And this is what gets the news. All right. So if you are, let me back up a little bit. The media doesn't report this correctly. All of these changes would be made to a group of people who are at a certain age at the time they make the change or younger.
Usually 40 and below.
Yeah, 40 and below. I could make the argument for 45 or 50, right? But
I can make the argument for higher than that. But yeah,
the people
usually
who are already claiming are never going to be impacted by this, but the media doesn't tell you that, right? Because if it bleeds, it leads.
Exactly.
Right? That's the way it works. This is going to be for people who are still a fairly long distance away from filing age. All right. So the first one would be you are currently allowed to file as early as age 62. Widows have a 60 age rule, and there's some other weird things, but
disability stuff like that.
The biggest one is at 62 years old, you're allowed to claim. Well, what if they change that to make it 63 or 64 or 65? It makes a lot of sense to make those changes because people are living longer. Your retirement, once upon a time, if you worked for 30 years, you worked at the factory and you worked for 30 years and you got the gold watch and you retired. Your retirement lasted 5 to 10 years and then you died.
Yeah.
Now it's very common for people to be retired as long or longer than the amount of time that they were actually working.
Yeah.
And that's going to get more so in the future. That's not realistic. Right? Not if somebody else is going to be picking up the tab like Social Security or pensions. So it's very realistic to back that age where you're allowed to file off. I would say 64 or 65 is probably something that could be passed. Remember, if you're over a certain age now, and 40 is the age that most people are talking about, that means people like you and I would be unaffected, even though I'm not filing for a long time. You're not going to be filing for a long time. Pushing that back, that's a big deal. The last time that they made a change to that was 1984, right? 42 years ago. That's 2 generations since they made a change. So that's the first one. One of the other ones that's been discussed, for those of people who don't know, there is the full retirement age, or FRA. Once upon a time was 65. So they made a change and said, okay, now it's going to be 66. And then, by the way, if you were born in, correct me if I'm wrong, 1954 through 1959, I think that's right, you're going to get an incremental distance. So it's 66 in a number of months. right? That's when you hit your full
50,
retirement
55
age.
to 59.
Yeah, 55 to 59, I'm sorry. And then 1960 or later, which is a huge window of people. That's baby boomers all the way through Gen Alpha fall in that group. Now that's age 67. They got to change that.
Yeah.
And it would make a lot of sense.
And they should.
They should, absolutely.
And they should. Once again, we're not politicians trying to get reelected. Right. They should reform the program.
100%. They need to make this change. It is unrealistic for somebody. I'm about to be 55. It is unrealistic for somebody my age who's married, and you look at all the statistics, to say that I'm going to retire at 62 and never work again. The average person just simply should not be doing that. You're going to outlive your money. You're going to outlive the benefits. That's so pushing that back, encouraging people to file later props up the system a little bit. So that one's kind of an obvious one that will really bend people the wrong way. But the other one that I've heard that I think is the most...
I will add
go ahead and
I'll
add
add
to
this
that
too,
one.
because I think there's a lot to say from just a health and wellness standpoint that you shouldn't be retiring at 62.
No.
You shouldn't retire at 62.
I would be bored out of my mind at that age.
And I think that it shouldn't be a goal. Now, if you want to retire from full-time work and you want to go do something else, that's a different conversation entirely. But people that want to basically stop being productive at the age of 62, when the average lifespan is early 80s, something like that.
That's average.
I mean, basically, you want to spend a fourth of your life unproductive, as an unproductive member of society.
That's not human nature.
That's not human nature. It doesn't provide you meaning. It doesn't provide you purpose. There's only so much travel you can do. Right? We talk a lot about purpose and the purpose of money and going and having fun and doing all these things. And we love talking about that stuff, right? Talk about it. That's the core of what we do, is finding purpose. But finding purpose does not mean going and sitting on your couch at 62.
Right.
I mean, it just doesn't. So
I've worked with our firm works with a lot of teachers. My parents were teachers. Mom retired as a teacher. That's a group of people that I've spent a lot of time around. And the average teacher really wants to retire between 55 and 60. And I think that's because that is an overwhelming job, right? It really does beat you down over a long period of time. But I don't remember ever speaking to a teacher about their retirement when they said, when I retire, I'm never doing anything again. Almost every one of them says, I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to work part-time. I am going to do some other things. They plan on continuing to be productive because they're realistic people.
Cops are the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, military. There's a reason why in cops and military, the typical retirement is 20 years of service. It's a high stress load, but they all want to go do something afterwards. It's human nature to do that. So it would make sense for the Social Security program to change the rules to coincide with human nature and longevity at this point.
Yeah, I see it mostly with blue collar workers, factory workers.
It's a tough job to do.
It's a tough job,
decades.
and I get it absolutely. So it's also a different mentality.
Yeah,
it's kind of a smaller town type of, And I'm not knocking the mentality. It's just it's a generational thing. It's a different cultural view about work and retirement. Because there's a lot of people out there that don't tie their purpose to their job.
Right.
Their job is just a way to get paid, and that they started doing something and they never left it, and they're stuck, and they feel stuck, and they never made a change. And so they're looking forward to getting out. They're retiring from their job instead of retiring to something. We talk about that all the time, right? You need to retire to something, and more people are focused around getting out of work than they are focused on looking and moving into retirement. And that's there's a big difference there.
There is.
There's a big difference there. We can continue to talk about some of the structural changes, but really that's the big one.
Yeah, I think that one is.
Changing retirement ages, either changing retirement ages on the front end as far as the first year that you can go to file, or maybe even extending from 70 to beyond.
I was going to say there was one more point I wanted to make on there, and that's the one.
Yep, go
it's currently, if you wait beyond your full retirement age to file, for each year that you wait beyond your filing age, depending on your year of birth, you get an additional 8% of eligibility. But there's a cap, right? There's no logical reason to wait beyond age 70. So for us, we were both born after 1960, so our full retirement age is 67. If we wait until 68, we get 108%, then 116, then 124% at age 70. There's no benefit for us to waiting beyond that. Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? If you offered me a high enough benefit, I'm going to be tempted to wait longer. That's true of most people. So I think it's very realistic for them to say, okay, at 71, you get this. At 72, you get this. Change that cap. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't make the cap go away, right? Keep pushing it to the point that the longer I wait, the bigger the paycheck I get. And that sounds great, but remember, I'm taking a risk because I don't know how long I'm going to live. I don't know if I'm going to wait until, say, 77 to file because I'm going to get this fantastic number. I could pass away at 76 in a car accident, not because of an old age condition, something that could happen to anyone. Well, if you play the statistics, and that's what insurance companies do, so the government probably should as well, if they play the statistics, they give an incentive for people to wait longer, knowing a lot of those people are going to be wrong, which means the money never actually gets taken out of the fund. That would prop the system up in a huge, huge way. So that was the third major change that I could foresee.
Yeah, and there's definitely some others, but at the end of the day,
those are the big ones.
Any of these big changes are going to be met with a lot of resistance, and I don't think it's warranted.
They shouldn't be. Absolutely not.
There has to be major changes to the program in order to ensure that the program survives. Because the alternative is to completely scrap the program and move to a privatization system, which 100%
that'll
I'm
go
in
over
favor
like
of.
a ton of bricks.
Hey, I mean that's.
I'm a fan, but
I'm a huge fan, but it'll never happen. I have to live in the world as it is, not the world that I want it to be. Right. The Social Security program will never be privatized, so we have to talk about realistic solutions to keep it solvent for as long as it possibly can. And so really some of these changes have to be made, and they will be made.
They will be.
But they're going to be made incrementally. You're not going to wake up one day and you're going to find all of these changes in one single bill. Right. You're going to find one small change here, another small change here. They'll change it from maybe they'll change the filing age from 62 to 62 in 6 months.
Right. They're not going to change the big wholesale ones like we think they should.
Yeah, and then they'll make that 63 at some point, and they'll do all kinds of different things around the edges to keep the program solvent for as long as they possibly can, to avoid making major changes for as long as they possibly can. With that being said, that's probably a pretty good stopping point to talk about this delicious little slice of heaven, this Elijah Craig 18. So
is this not fantastic?
It's like an oaky butterscotch.
Now I will say this. I hadn't tasted this one in quite some time. When I first tasted it, I was like, wow, that is all oak. Little hints of other things, but it was a good oak. It was really pleasant. It was really good. Now, I don't know if you tried this or not. When I got down fairly low in the glass, I put one drop of water. I was very careful to do that just to see what it would do. It actually tampered the oak just a little bit, but that butterscotch that you were talking about exploded. I mean, it really came out. So I said, okay, I will admit that if you weren't watching this, I poured a little bit more because that's really good. And I immediately put a drop of water in it. And I got the same exact thing, even though there was a lot more bourbon in the glass than when I put the drop in the first time. It tampers that oak. It's still there. It's still very oak forward. But that butterscotch flavor really came out. It's like, this is a perfect example of, this is a 90 proof bourbon. You don't want to put a lot of water in this. It'll kill it,
not at all.
Right? But that one little drop causes that chemical reaction that does change the flavor. And oh my gosh, I'd never tried that in this one before, but me personally, every time I take a pour out of this bottle until it's gone, I will put one drop of water in it because that really... it made it so much better to me. And that's saying something because this is a fantastic bourbon.
My first couple sips, the oak was heavy. Incrementally, that's gone down with every sip that I've taken, and more of that butterscotch is coming out to the point that I'm getting more butterscotch than oak at this point.
Right.
But yeah, it was very oaky at the front. But now it's like candy at this point.
So good. When you said that, something else that I thought, before I put the drop of water in there, the burn, which there was a surprising amount of burn. It was very pleasant.
Oh, I've had like no burn.
Maybe burn is the wrong word. The spicy note sensation, whatever, was all up through the nose.
Yeah.
And I like that.
I'll say
when I put the drop of water in, that part went away, and I felt it actually go back into the palate. I don't know if I'm imagining that or if that was something that would really happen, but it's a perfect example of how even the slightest little minute change, even the change of the type of glass that you're using, can have a pretty major impact on the nose, the flavors, all of those things in bourbon. That's what makes bourbon so much fun, is being able to experiment like that.
That's why this is one of the unicorns, right?
This is so good.
It's a fantastic pour, which we knew that it would be. You obviously have had it before. Just a fantastic pour. So one of the best out there.
Oh, wow, that's good. Now, you go back to what you said at the beginning. It is Derby week. Elijah Craig has no official affiliation with the Derby or anything like it. But Elijah Craig is so synonymous with bourbon. You know, the actual
with Louisville
pastor, you know, that it's named after. It's one of the first guys to ever make what we now call bourbon. It just kind of goes along with anything Kentucky. So it's very, very popular drink during the Derby season. So, wow, if you can get your hands on an Elijah Craig 18 and not pay through the nose for it, this is a fantastic pour.
Well, like I said, my sister used to work at Heaven Hill, so that was, you know, birthdays, Christmases, whatever. She would usually show up with like a bottle of Elijah Craig because she knew that was something that I liked a lot. Every now and then I might get a 10 or a 12, but no, that 18, that's good
stuff. And I can't say that about a lot of bourbons at 18 years old. They start losing it.
Yeah.
This one is not one of them. That is fantastic at that age.
Yeah, so, all right.
Let's wrap that one up.
That's a lot of stats.
That's a lot.
There's a lot, but it was a lot of good information. There's a lot to talk about at Social Security, and we really didn't even scratch this. So we could keep this going for another hour for everyone's sake of listening, and we won't. But no, it was a good episode. A lot of good information. If you have any more questions around Social Security, how it pertains to you, we didn't even talk about filing strategies in this one. We kind of hinted at it. We never really got to it. But there's all kinds of different filing strategies if you have questions around those and what's appropriate for you specifically and how it relates to your retirement income plan. Please give us a call. Go to our website, fwppartners.com. We would love to chat with you in more detail. Once again, for Eric Douglas, Chris Vaughn, and Family Wealth Planning Partners, thanks for joining us, and until next time.